Today, we're diving into a really fascinating story about technology, big money, and one government's incredibly bold bet on its own independence. So, let's just start with a fundamental question. Think about all the software that runs a government. The operating systems, the word processors, all of it. How much should that actually cost taxpayers? Is it just this endless bill we have to keep paying forever? Well, it turns out for one state in Germany, the answer to that question was a very clear, very firm less. A whole lot less, actually. They decided it was time to take on one of the biggest and often hidden costs in running a modern government. And to really get why this is such a big deal, you have to understand a concept called vendor lock-in. You've probably felt this yourself. It's when a company, or in this case a government, becomes so reliant on one company's products, think Microsoft for example, that getting away from them becomes almost impossible. You're basically stuck, and you have to pay whatever licensing fees they decide to charge. And that brings us to the main character in our story today, the German state of Schleswig Holstein. They looked at the situation and basically said, "We've had enough." They decided to make a really radical change in their IT strategy and wave goodbye to one of the biggest names in tech. So, what was the big plan? Well, the goal was to completely break free from that expensive proprietary software and go all in on free open source solutions. So, instead of using Microsoft Office, they'd switch to something called LibreOffice. This was a huge project, and it was all about gaining independence and building a digital future they could actually control. Okay, that's a bold move. But the real question is, did it actually work? Let's get to the results, and we'll start with the part that always gets everyone's attention, the money. Get ready for this. The state expects to save over 15 million euros next year alone, just from license costs. And here's the kicker. That's not a one-time deal. That's 15 million euros they expect to save every single year from here on out. Now, of course, a massive switch like this isn't free. You can't just flip a switch. There was a necessary one-time investment of 9 million euros to get everything converted and to help fund the development of their new open source setup. Okay, so let's do the math here because this is the crucial part. You spend 9 million euros once, but you save 15 million euros every single year. That means the entire project completely pays for itself in less than a year. After that, it is pure savings for the taxpayers. I mean, talk about a fantastic return on investment. And this isn't just some idea on a whiteboard. They are seriously making it happen. Check this out. If you exclude the tax administration, which has some unique needs, nearly 80% of all government workplaces have already been switched over. They are well on their way. But, and there's always a but, it would be a huge mistake to paint this as some perfectly smooth, easy ride. A change this big is gonna have some serious bumps in the road. So let's be fair and look at the other side of the coin, the real challenges they've faced. Right away, the political opposition pointed out that those impressive numbers might not tell the full story. As one state parliament member, Kiana Stender, put it, just because the software is installed on 80% of computers, that doesn't mean 80% of employees are actually able to do their jobs properly with it. At least, not yet. And there were definitely some specific, very real issues. There were reports of ongoing migration errors that were still popping up. You had some employees getting really frustrated trying to learn totally new programs. And that last 20% of workplaces, they're still on Microsoft because they use specialized software that is technically hardwired to it, making it much harder to switch. So you hear about all those headaches, and you have to ask, why? Why keep pushing through all this trouble? And that brings us to the much bigger, almost philosophical idea that's really driving this whole thing. This was never just about saving money. The real endgame here is something called digital sovereignty. It's this powerful idea that a state, a country, or any organization for that matter, should have complete control over its own digital destiny. It means you're no longer dependent, technically or financially, on a few giant companies. You are in the driver's seat. And the state's digitalization minister, Dirk Schroeder, he put it perfectly. He said, "This project is a marathon, not just a sprint." And that's such a key way to look at it. He's admitting, yeah, there are challenges, but he sees them as expected hurdles in a long, ambitious race, not as signs that the whole thing is failing. And there's a hidden opportunity in all this chaos. The people behind the project argue that this isn't just about swapping one program for another. It's a once-in-a-generation chance to completely rethink how the government works from the ground up, to finally get rid of old, inefficient processes that were baked into the old software. So It all boils down to this one central question. Schleswig Holstein is proving that the financial argument for this kind of switch is incredibly strong, but they're also showing us that the path to get there is full of friction and frustration. It really makes you wonder, for governments and organizations all over the world, is that ultimate prize of digital independence actually worth the really difficult journey?